Welcome back to Dear Young Person. I know for those of you who are currently watching me, right, you'll be like, why is she wearing a blazer? Why so serious? I'm dressed this way because this is a serious topic. It's about your career. More importantly, what to do before you take that job. And knowing your negotiables, knowing what the perks of the job are. As somebody who has, how many jobs have I worked since I actually became an adult doing actual adult stuff like looking for jobs. I think I've worked in about 5 companies. Let me see. Actually, like 6 or 7 companies. Wow, I have moved around a lot, and that's just what 6 years. Yeah. Anyway, some were like part-time contract roles, so it doesn't really count. Anyway, so I let me give a little story about my background. I have a every time I say this, it's always surprising. I don't know why. I have a bachelor's degree in human physiology, and when it was time to do my compulsory national 1 year service, which is called National Youth Service Corps, I ended up serving in an ad agency, more like the media buying arm of the ad agency. So I got exposed to media buying, working with media partners, buying spots on radio, on TV, on billboards, and all of that. Before I finished my service year, I already knew that I didn't want to work there because it felt like there was no place for me to be the kind of creative person that I was. Because I want to say I was a writer or like I am a writer, but then I used to write and I really liked social media, but I couldn't really do that because there was really nobody to provide any kind of guidance in that light. So to me, to my 20-year-old self, no, 21-year-old self, it didn't make sense to stay there. Wow, I have been smart from a very young age for a very long time. Anyway, it didn't make sense to 21-year-old me to just be in a role where there was no guidance for me and I couldn't see myself growing. So I left and then came back to the digital arm of the agency, which is Virus Digital. And that's where I started my proper, oh, this is not NYSC, this is a proper corporate job, proper job. That's where I started. And in that role, because it was a proper corporate job, I learned about things like bonuses. I learned about things like, oh, appraisals and some other corporate things like, oh, health insurance, all of those things, pensions, all of those things. And that was really helpful because by the time I applied for the next job that I took, I knew to ask for these things. I knew like the most important thing was that I knew that gross salary is different from net salary because, oh my God. Because if you don't know that, you are going to be very surprised when you get your pay slip. If you don't know that gross is not the same thing as net, you'll be very surprised when your offer letter tells you what the gross is. And in your mind, you're like, oh, this is my take home. And then when it's time for you to get paid, what was in your gross is not what is in your net. So very important. That was like one of the very first lessons I learned. Gross is not the same as net. Your net salary is what you take home. Your gross salary is everything else, is like everything that you're meant to earn minus the other deductions that the company makes, whether it's to your pension or it's to your health insurance. So it's very important that you know that. So yeah, from there, I learned some things to ask in my next role. And the more I moved companies, I changed jobs, the better I got at knowing what my non-negotiables were, at knowing what benefits were important, like even more important than take-home salary. I think that especially if you're someone who grew up in Nigeria or you've lived in Nigeria a long time or you've lived in maybe Africa really, and there's this thing where I There's one design I did that said blood of Jesus is not an insurance cover, or is not an emergency number or something like that. Because if you grow up Nigerian and you talk to people about health insurance, they're like, I don't need health insurance. I have Jesus. I have blood of Jesus, right? But I learned that perks like pension, health insurance, sometimes are like the benefits that you should focus on even more than your net salary. Are you getting any L&D budget? That's learning and development budget. Is your company going to pay you for learning, or pay you to learn, or give you money to take those courses that make you better? Do you have health insurance that covers maybe your spouse, or can cover any of your other family members? Are you getting pension? Because and most of these startups, they will give you health insurance like that is, oh, one, oh, so great benefit. Oh, you must work with us because we are giving you health insurance. But then nobody's remitting your pensions. So, and if you're somebody that is very particular about these kinds of things, you will miss out on them. So it's very important that before you take that job, you have these kinds of conversations. So, before we go into the actual things that I want to suggest to you that you should ask about and know about, I just want to say that, and this is something that I've been saying to myself for the past couple of years. It's fine to not know what you, or like, it's fine to not know what you want, but it is important that you know what you don't want. So while you're still on that journey of discovering what you want, at least know what you don't want. Because I can promise you, you may not know all the perks or benefits that you should be looking at when you're trying to get a new job. But it's important that you know what you don't want. Like, oh, I don't want to work with a toxic boss. No, I don't want to work in a job where there's line manager that can help me chart the course of my career. I don't want to work in a job where I join this week and then the next week they're asking me, what's your impact? I don't want to work in a job with a broken onboarding process. I don't want to work in a job where the people who joined this week, by 3 months they are leaving, like a place with a very high attrition rate. All of these things, right, are the negative things that you would typically hear a lot more. So it's completely fine if you don't know what you want, but at least know what you don't want. Know the things that this, nope, I'm not going to work here. Know those things. Okay, so now into the conversations to have before you take that job. Some of the questions you can ask that are tied to the company culture that lets you know, do these people really mean what they say? Because when you go to the websites of most companies, you see, oh, company mission, company vision. Okay, good and fine. You know buzzwords, you know fancy words. But how does this translate to the lives of the everyday employees? Right? And to know this, even before you join a company, right? To know this, there are some questions that you can ask in the interview stage. Questions like, especially if you're having this interview with the hiring manager or the HR person, if you don't get the chance to interview with the hiring manager, right? Questions like, how might the person in this role contribute to the overall mission of this company? How does the organization support professional growth and career development? So things like, is there an L&D budget? Because when you ask, some people will say, oh yes, we have an L&D budget. Some people may not have that, but they have like other provisions that give you time and space to learn. Like my current company, we don't have an L&D budget, but we have something called Research Fridays, where every other week, from around 10 a.m. to like maybe close of business, right, you get to do research on things that can help you get better at your work. And this time can be spent maybe taking a certification course, or just learning about like something else that helps you be better at your work. So while they aren't giving you actual money to say, oh, go get certified in this course, right? They're giving you that time to actually work towards that certification. And that is because time, especially when it's company time, is very valuable. So if you're getting that time off to go do something that makes you better, right? It works for them, it works for you, and that's fine. A very important question to ask your hiring manager where possible is, how are KPIs measured? Because this is very important, because you can go into a company, you can start a new role, especially if it's in a startup that is yet to find product market fit. Like they're still trying to, the ship is still trying to even stay together. And then there are no KPIs. So you join the company today, and in 1 month they're asking you, so what's your impact so far? Like, what have you done? And you don't even know where to start from, because nobody gave you KPIs. For those who may not know what KPIs are, they are key performance indicators. So basically, those indicators that help people judge your work in terms of actual numbers, actual figures. So please ask, how are KPIs measured? What, like, if possible, what are the KPIs? So that I know what I'm getting myself into. So that as I'm signing on the dotted lines of this contract, I know that, okay, this is my target for the next quarter, or for the next half year, right? Very important. Another thing to ask, if you can ask the HR or the hiring manager, is, what are the policies around sick days and vacation? Some companies typically will give you maybe like 5 sick days in a year or something. Some companies have unlimited sick days. And then in terms of annual leave, which is vacation, some companies could give, I think, 20 days. I think it also differs across countries as well. I was researching something, was it on Friday or like some days ago? And I saw that annual leave days differed across countries. I think was it France that it's 25 days? In the UK, I think it's 20 days fixed. Like, it's a must that every employee must get 20 days of annual leave, and it can be extended based off what the employer wants, or anything else. But there is like a fixed amount of time that you have to give your employees off. So ask questions like that. My current company, we have unlimited sick days. And honestly, I think it's just one of those things that makes employees less anxious when they fall sick. Because if you only have 5 sick days and something happens and the sickness is prolonged, or maybe, I mean, it's an entire calendar year. There are 12 months in the year. If your employee is maybe somebody who is of the AA genotype and they're living in Nigeria, and they have to deal with like with malaria maybe twice or thrice in a year, 5 sick days are not going to really help them. So it's very important that you know about these things. Another question to ask is, does the company allow for employee flexibility? Things like working from home, flexible home hours. Ever since 2020, where we all found out that we could work remotely and still be productive, it's been very fascinating watching how companies navigate this. And I've found that when your employees are able to do work around their normal lives, they are more inclined to want to stay with you because of that perk. Too often, we underestimate how important it is to have flexibility when it comes to work, as opposed to sitting down in an office from 9 to 5, not being able to do anything else. It's it's really freeing, and I think it's a very important question to ask, especially in today's workforce. Another question to consider is, you should ask them if risk taking is encouraged. Because we're young, we want to take risks, take risks and succeed, right? So it's very important to find out what your company's appetite for risk is in terms of, are we able to run experiments? What happens when we run an experiment and it fails? Are we the kinds of people that will say it's either we win or we learn? Like my CEO will say, it's either we win or we learn. There's nothing like, oh, we failed, right? Because we are doing what we are doing to learn and iterate and then grow. So ask, what's the risk appetite? Not that I would say I have this idea and then it doesn't work out and everybody's like, you're going to lose your job. So very important. Another one is knowing how your manager works with the team. There was this company I joined where we had a working with me document. It was pretty much a document that outlined, because it was a fully remote team and we were mostly async, that's asynchronous, which means that you can leave a message and somebody answers it maybe in 2 hours, like as opposed to being on meetings all the time. So that working with me document outlined how people on the team worked, the communication modes that they preferred, all of those things, just to make it easier because we were fully remote, right? So find out how your manager, or like how the people like on your team will communicate. Now this may be something that you will find out after you have joined. This may be something that you find out after you've joined the team, not necessarily before you take that job, but it's helpful to have that in mind. And this one is very, very important. Very, very important. What do they need you to get done in the first 90 days? For most companies, when you join, you are on probation for 3 months, which is 90 days. And most people will want you to have a 90-day plan. But if you're an entry level employee, it means that this company is basically employing you to learn from them and they expect you to grow such that you're then able to deliver even more value. So it's very important that you find out, especially from your hiring manager, what is expected of me in the next 90 days. This is my probation period. What are the indicators that will make you say, okay, this person is doing a great job and this person is going to pass probation? Very, very important. Just the same way you need to know your KPIs, you need to also know what are the actual things expected from you in the first 90 days. Like I mentioned earlier, it's fine to not know what you want, but that doesn't stop you from knowing what you don't want and working with that until you can figure out what you actually want. That sounds like a word salad. But anyway, I hope that this was helpful and that you actually ask these questions, because it's important that you know the answers. Ask these questions to avoid I die no. Ask these questions to avoid any potential issues that could arise from not asking them and being clear from the get-go. All right. If you have any questions or you have any topics that you want me to address, you can leave a comment or you can reach me on Instagram or TikTok. Yeah. I was going to say on Facebook, but like I don't use Facebook so much anymore. Even on Twitter too. I'm not on Twitter so much, but I would probably get a notification, so that works as well. All right. Until next time, crush it in that job. I'm rooting for you, and bye.